Greetings and thanks for tuning in. I'm Maura Kelly from People's Academy Middle Level in Morrisville. Welcome to the 4th episode of the PLP Pathways webinar series. I'd like to thank Orca Media for letting us film this show in their studios.
Hi, and I'm Don Taylor. I teach language arts here in Montpelier, and I'd also like to thank the Middle Grades Collaborative for sponsoring our PLP Pathways project.
Before we get into today's show, we want to make sure you know how to stay connected to the PLP Pathways. You can visit our site, follow us on Twitter, and keep tabs on the project through our blog. We'll show you these again at the end of the show.
Every month, we'll be hosting a Google Hangout for Vermont educators. In addition to this TV show, we're supporting PLP implementation efforts across the state by creating some web-based, collaborative, professional development. Videos will be posted on the PLP Pathways YouTube channel, and we encourage teachers and interested parties to visit us on the PLP Pathways YouTube site or, as Maura talked about, at the PLP Pathways webpage. So at this point in the show, we'd like to talk about parent and community relations. Maura, as you know, because Act 77 required 7th graders to have personal learning plans in place by November 30th, we've been really reviewing and hopefully improving our information outreach to parents in the community so that they understand personal learning plans, Act 77, and how this is going to impact education around Vermont. Can you, Maura, explain some of the steps that you've taken at People's Academy to reach out to the parents?
Yeah. So I think it's so important that we're involving parents in these conversations so they can support the PLP at home as well. We start talking about the personal learning plan at open house with parents who come in, really just giving them a little bit of insight of what we're going to be working on. We also have resources for them on our team website and help our students guide their parents to those resources when needed. Right before student-led conferences, we send home a mailing that has information about the purpose of the student-led conference and the goal setting and a little bit of the rationale. And then we really expect our students and coach our students through the student-led conference to explain the process, why they have a personal learning plan, what their goals are, and the purpose of the personal learning plan.
Yeah, we really did some similar efforts this year. We tried to develop an information stream with specific benchmarks so that we could know what we were sending out to parents and that we could set a curriculum almost for parents about personal learning plans. For us, it started on open house. We distributed some information. We talked about the personal learning framework. We talked about what steps and activities kids would be doing. And about a week, 2 weeks after that, we sent home a letter, again explaining the purpose of PLPs, explaining how kids were moving through the identity phase and into the growth and reflection by setting goals. And then about 2 weeks prior to the conferences, we sent out another letter that explained not only what the conference would look like, but we gave parents and students a script so that they would understand what the pre-conference, when the student was going through their PLP and explaining it to the parent, what that should look like. We were hoping that through this outreach, the conference that we had could really be focused on the student's challenges and strengths, and also the goals that they had selected out and what they would be working through and collecting evidence for in their PLP. One of the interesting aspects of Act 77 is that I believe you have to have evidence that the parents have been involved. And so what we're doing is, or we're trying to do, is after the conferences, make sure that we've collected information that tells us that the parents were able to talk to the students and provide that evidence.
We've also done that. We really utilize Google Forms a lot. So after the survey, the parent and the student completes the Google survey together after the conference. And we also utilize this because not every family can come out to the school for a student-led conference about their portfolio or their personal learning plan. And so we're able to have students filming them running a conference at home with a parent or guardian and then taking the Google survey. And so we're still able to have that conversation with parents even if they're not physically able to come to the school.
So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. Can you explain how you use Google Forms and what that looked like?
Yep. So Google Form is a tool that you can use to develop a survey. On the Google Form that we use after conferences, we record the parent's name and the student's name, but then we ask questions about what the parent identifies as strengths of a student goal, what the parent identifies as challenges, how the parent's going to support the student in the goal, and also have the parent and student make some commitments around the goal. What are some dates that they're going to be keeping track of, and where are they going to be working on this? Is it going to be at home or school? Any supports that they could use.
That sounds great, and that sounds like something I probably want to talk more about with you about, because that's a tool we're trying to figure out, again, how to collect that evidence,
right,
but also as part of the growth and reflection to see how that can change over time and whether or not having the parents involved is going to allow kids to achieve their goals more effectively. So that sounds great. Thanks very much. Maura, now that teachers, teams, and students have entered the growth and reflection stage, how are you working with students in the collection of evidence, tying that to goals, and regular reflection on their performance?
So one of the things that we did before students even set their goals, we had them visualize what it would look like when they accomplished a goal. And we had them do that because we wanted them to think about, where would be those moments that if someone was to take a picture, it would show that you were proficient or have met your goal. So in doing that, we had them set goals where they could really find that evidence and brainstorm some examples of evidence that they could include. But we really try and have them in a constant reflection cycle. So in all of their core classes, they're constantly blogging about their learning and using labels to keep their blogs organized. And we're also giving them opportunities to reflect. So giving them a variety of prompts to choose from to really think about meaningful reflection about their goals and their growth.
So this isn't meant to be a trick question, but when you say they're blogging about their activities, say on a daily basis, do you differentiate between blogging about what's happening and blogging about the learning and a reflection? Is that different? And if so, how is that different in your classroom?
So I would say the students blog for a variety of reasons, everything from my daily creative writing warm-up to students actively reflecting on either their goals or on showing mastery of a specific target skill. But I don't think that they see it as different, but through the labeling, they're able to see what sort of a piece that they're doing. So for example, they have a label reflection, and then they'll know it's a goals reflection, or they're tagging it or labeling it to humanities and narrative writing. And so they're able to sort of categorize that way.
That's excellent information. I've been employing Blogger more this year to have kids write about and think about what they've been doing in class, but it sounds like you're using it in a more dynamic way, and I would really appreciate, I do appreciate hearing that, and also thinking about different ways that I can have kids blogging and reflecting. What we've done this year is we've had kids start to use tags and labels and identify learning, and that's something that I typically prompt the kids with questions to think about or to answer. And then so far we've had 2 more formal reflective blogs that are a little bit longer. We use the writing process, and it's a more formal piece. And I think that's been helpful for kids to measure and think about their growth. But back to the evidence piece, what are some of the criteria for kids pulling up these performance pieces or these evidence and putting them onto the PLP?
So we really want our students to be thinking about growth over time. And we also want them to be thinking about how dynamic evidence can be. So it doesn't just have to be a written piece. It can be a video, it can be a photograph, it can be really anything related to their goal. And so what we have our students do is pull those pieces of evidence or sections of a piece of work and then add their own thoughts to it. And that's sort of the reflection piece. And that's one thing that I really like about the Blogger is that you can add links to sites and upload things from different apps.
Okay, so what we've done, I'm taking a more traditional approach, is that I've identified sort of key pieces throughout the trimester or throughout the unit that I envision the kid eventually putting that onto the PLP. So for example, earlier in the year, we wrote an argument paper about watersheds. And because we spent so much time in that, and because this is a reflection of academic writing, I expected and had the kids post that evidence. And what I'm hearing you say is that there's ways of creating more dynamic evidence and putting those onto the PLP and integrating Blogger into that, so that you're really getting a full picture of what kids can do and not just in one mode of literacy. Mm-hmm. And that's an idea that I think teachers should take away from the work with the PLP too, is that there can be a lot of multimodal literacies, mm-hmm. and kids who have different visual or listening skills or speaking skills can demonstrate that using these different pieces of evidence.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we don't want to have happen, because it is a personal learning plan, if a student struggles in literacy, and because the personal learning plan tends to be sort of literacy heavy, we don't want students to feel like they have a barrier. And so it's really an equalizer when you're able to give them many different opportunities to show their thinking.
That's great. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah. Okay,
thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the PLP Pathways TV show. If you'd like to learn more about personal learning plans or the implementation process, please check out our website. You can access our material by visiting the Middle Grades Collaborative webpage and clicking on PLP Pathways. Or, as we previously mentioned, you can follow us on Twitter or Google+.
We're also going to have our webinar at 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, December 17th. At that time, we're going to talk more about implementing the PLP and the growth and reflection process of the personal learning framework. Thanks for joining us, and again, we hope to see you on the 17th of December.
Thank you very much. Take care.